everybody, welcome back to some more Pick'ems. I'm back here with Rudd, and so this past week was a bit of a weird one. First off, I did not end up saving my West Region predictions on accident, but thankfully my Pick'ems weren't that great. So East Region first. We saw the Los Angeles Valiant really kind of prove that they are a team that can pick up victories now, especially since they picked up Marvel. I think that he really kind of carried both of these games against the Fusion and the Charge. And I feel like a lot of people kind of didn't expect that to happen, but at the same time, I think Marvel was just kind of an underrated player. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely do think the Valiant are a bit higher than I initially rated them. I didn't want to go full in onto the Valiant train after they got their 1-1 against Charge, but I think now they've actually gotten a few respectable wins against not only, you know, the Charge, which previously gave them a hard time, but now they got a win against the uh, grand finalist. Although they did lose 4-0, they still had a pretty good run. So they've proven that they can beat good teams. But now we talk about what's up. I want to talk about what's down. And I think what's down is the Shanghai Dragons. They've kind of fallen and stumbled into this new meta. And it's not looking that good for them. I think. And it's not. I don't think we can use the excuse all that much of it just being a high ping and the situation there because they've shown us they can do good. Like the kickoff clash, Shanghai Dragons basically looked like last year's Shanghai Dragons. They were just that good. Like
And
you couldn't tell the difference.
another
But
thing I do
now,
want to point out real quick before you continue on, uh, they talked about why they had no face cams, and it was because of that high ping. We look at that Spark match; they did have face cams, so it's potentially that they did get their Wi-Fi fixed, and now it's just the fact that they're just not fitting in this meta.
yeah, I just don't think I think they definitely need to start playing Sojourn on all those. Like, just maybe try a new meta because what they did last week, like, just did not work for them. And I think teams like the Dynasty and the Spark are teams they should be going head to head with. They should be at least going like map 5 and at the bare minimum taking a map.
Yeah, just like this
Yeah.
Shanghai Dragons is just not what we come to expect from them. And I'm really hoping that coming next week we see something similar to that of the Dallas Fuel.
Well, speaking of the Dallas Fuel, that they definitely did get back on their feet with two 3-0s, which, you know, debate on how, how they 3-0'd. Some people, thought that, the Mayhem played well and the Titans played well, but in the end, it was still 3-0, which really says, Fuel's back. Granted, these are two of the lower tier teams uh, in this region. Mayhem's pretty mid tier right now, and Titans are still at that winless record. But at least, many people were predicting that, the Mayhem was just gonna walk all over them after last week. So it's glad to see they're back.
Yeah, and I do gotta say I do kind of credit that loss a bit from the Mayhem to the fact that they only have a main tank player and someone who just isn't very good on those off tank players, off tank characters, such as
Revenge for Adam.
Zarya, Diva, and Sigma.
No Adam, no win.
Yep, no Adam, no win. And another team that I think kind of really fell apart along with the Florida Mayhem is the Houston Outlaws. Uh, I expected this game against the Glasgow a lot closer, especially since Houston right now is well, before this week they were coming in at number two in seeds, so they were looking really strong. They had great versatility on like Doomfist, Sigma. They had Diva, Zarya. They could play whatever was meta right now. However, they kind of fell apart due to the fact that they just kept C9ing that the objective. I think it didn't happen twice in that game.
It might have, I think.
Yeah, Houston just had a really rough day this week, and I don't think that it's the fact that they're doing poorly. I think it's just the fact that they're just having a rough game.
But I think that goes to show. I think that game more or less is honestly the Gladiators taking control.
Yeah,
Like the Gladiators are super good at like taking comps and kind of dismantling them, and especially with a team like Houston who like has their own comp. I think Gladiators were able to pick it apart like they did the Dallas Fuel last tournament.
yeah, and so that was a bit of the highlights from last week. Now I want to get into this coming week. Starts Friday with the East region. So the Philadelphia Fusion are going against the Hangzhou Spark. Fusion coming off of a loss against the LA Valiant, and the Spark coming off of a win against the Shanghai Dragons. It's clear who has the momentum going into this, honestly, and I think that Spark are just going to carry that momentum. Fusion, I think, could take it to be a bit of a close game, but I do think that Spark overall will get the victory in this match.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I don't think there's much any team can do that'll shift up like any of their play sets. I don't think there's going to be a match. I don't think this is a match that's has massive upset potential here.
Yeah, especially since Fusion kind of refused to play at Sojourn, and I think that Spark are kind of picking up pretty well, and just kind of the general meta. A team that isn't picking up the general meta is the Guangzhou Charge as they go up against the Chengdu Hunters. Uh, is it really anything to say that the Hunters are going to win this?
Yeah, Chargers looking like one of the not so great teams coming into the APAC region, and I think honestly some of the teams in like Paris or Nixel could probably give Charge a really hard time. So, and especially being the APAC region, now that you're the bottom dog and it's not the Valiant anymore, you're gonna really have to pick yourself back up in
Yeah,
order if you're the Charge.
and I do think though that the Charge can pick up a map just because it is the Chengdu Hunters. They are not known for their consistent gameplay. I think that given the right circumstances, Guangzhou could definitely take a map, but it's probably more likely to be a 3-0. Although I am going to get the big brain play of giving Charge a map. However, here's the match that I will not be giving them a map on. It is against the Seal Dynasty. Not much really else to say. I mean, Seal also coming off of a victory over the Dragons, and Charge is the Charge.
Exactly. This Soul roster is so good, and Smurf is just becoming the ultimate flex god tank. Apparently, you know they don't have another off tank, but apparently they don't need one if they're going to be this good. Plus,
Yeah,
that DPS is just insane. Same to the sport. Like this is really just the super team we thought it was back going into the season. Like we say this every season about Soul that oh they're just it's it's a really good team, but are they actually going to do well because it's Soul? And apparently this Soul roster is finally showing up.
so, what are your thoughts on this Chengdu Valiant game, though?
Now again, this is Chengdu, but I'm gonna go with the consistent or
The
and
more consistent LA Valiant.
well, I'm gonna saying Chengdu will win is kind of the like I guess I think the Chengdu Hunters are gonna win. I just think they're gonna win because they're I guess they have the more proven players. I think Valiant may or may I don't know. It's so weird just to see. I think it's just a good meta for the Hunters honestly, and that's why uh, I'm giving them the win. But it still could be the Valiant because it's also a good meta for them too.
Yeah, I am gonna
It seems to
disagree on
either
that.
way.
I do think the Valiant are gonna win. In fact, I actually think it's gonna go map 5. I think that both of these teams are dark horses. Chengdu, I think they're the reason why they're just a dark horse and they're not very good. Is just the fact that they are so inconsistent. That's just something that we've come to know the Chengdu Hunters for. Last season, they would do either do really well or they would be kind of okay. in this season, it kind of seems to be the other, kind of the same, except for the fact that they're either really bad or they're mid. And hopefully, I'm looking to see Chengdu prove that they're not able, like they can be the 2021 Chengdu Hunters again. So next up is two teams that had pretty poor performances last week, that being the Fusion and the Dragons. Uh, who do you think is really going to win? Because honestly, I feel like this is a little hard to predict.
Well, I'm just gonna go off of the kickoff clash, and every time the Fusion seemed to fight the dragons, they absolutely decimated them every time. Just and it was so shocking each and every time because it was at moments where Philly was at a low point and was like, could they even win against the Dragons this time? And then they win against the Dragons, and we say, okay, they won against the Dragons, but they can't win against them now, and they'd go win again, and it happened like 3 times. So I'm just gonna pick the Dragons or not the Dragons, the Fusion to win again.
Yeah, that seems like the easy one to go for, but honestly, it's hard for me to bet against the Dragons because like I am such a big Dragons fan. That being said, though, uh, the Fusion is much like the Hunters, but they are more of the 2021 Hunters, where they're either really good or really kind of just okay. And I think I'm leaning into this week. The Fusion might be a little better, but we may never know. Man, this is hard to. The Shanghai Dragons fan in me just wants to give Shanghai map 5.
Look, I'm not, I'm just choosing the easy way out by going off franchise history. But
I mean,
that's just
franchise
me.
history more dictates that Shanghai is a better team right there.
Uh, well, well, not really franchise history, but
The
this year.
5v5 franchise history.
Yeah, sure, go with that.
Alright, so the Steel Dynasty and Hangzhou Spark. Again, two teams that beat the Dragons last week. Both have big momentum going into this week. Who do you have and why?
This is gonna be a banger. I think definitely the two top seeds. It's gonna determine in this meta right now who's the best. And Spark, it's two teams. The Spark, they have like the versatility. They can play like a lot of things. But Dynasty, I think, has the better players like in general. So I'm gonna pick the Dynasty in map 5. And I think Spark could use all that versatility they have add to their advantage and sub out, and they could definitely get the win over the Dynasty. But I think as long as Dynasty take it in control, uh, they should have the match, or they should have this match.
I am going to disagree with you. I think that Seal, while they're good, it's again they're an inconsistent team, and hopefully we don't see a bad Seal dynasty because then that would mean that that Charge can pick up a victory. But overall, I think that Spark is the better team because of the fact that they have such versatility. If one comp's not working, they can easily switch it up to a different one, and it's something that Seal can't do. Uh, Spark can adapt and adapt and adapt, but Seal just kind of can't. They just kind of play with the pieces they have, while Spark can just continuously change what they can do, and I think that's gonna give them just a slight edge over the Seal dynasty. And to close off the weekend for East Region, we have the Shanghai Dragons and the LA Valiant, a game that I see being a banger as well.
And I think I'm gonna go. I don't predict the Valiant all that often, but I am going to predict the Valiant to win this one in a map 5 fashion.
As much as
I think regardless of where it's gonna go, I think it's gonna be a map 5 because both these teams, or at least the Valiant, definitely seem to love their map 5s. But I think Valiant now know how to win on a map 5 situation because they've done it like 2 times last week.
and
So
I
that's
am predicted to do it twice this week.
that's what I have. The Valiant just winning on the map 5. I think they have a good handle on this meta, and if Shanghai don't do something, then they're gonna stumble against the Valiant now.
Yeah, as much of a Shanghai fan as I am, I do got to put faith in this Valiant squad. They have such momentum going in because of the fact that they're being just so good with how they're playing. And it's just they're that surprising factor that nobody expects to be good. So I think that a lot of teams might now start really preparing for them, which could lead to their downfall. But at the same time, Valiant has a fairly competitive week this week, regardless of how prepared either team is for them.
Yeah, you would have thought, this week for the Dragons that their schedule would have been like, oh, this would be easy. But seeing last week, you're just like, wow, Valiant or Shanghai got a hard schedule now.
Yeah. Going on to the West region, starting Friday, we have the Paris Eternal against the London Spitfire. Last week we saw
Potential.
Paris. What?
I was gonna say potentially the last battle of EU.
Yep. The last battle of EU, we have the Paris Eternal and the London Spitfire. Paris looked really weak last week, even though they had the momentum coming in after their victory over the Boston Uprising. In London, proving that they are still probably the best team, the second best team in NA, or one of the best teams. Not maybe not the second, but definitely one of
Mm,
the top
Yeah,
runners.
I think London definitely got an easier schedule, but it wasn't, or it wasn't a hard schedule, but wasn't easy schedule either. Like you got the MAM, Toronto, you got a few of those teams. You also got like Excelsior last time, so they had a pretty easier schedule, but it's not to understate them and their accomplishments.
Yeah, I think that London though just kind of looks really good. They again
They
they
do.
have versatility. They could play Reinhardt with Chatty, and they can
Like
even
the
play
Sigma
Brawl
with
with
Coco.
Chatty. They can bring Paco on the Zarya, on the Sigma, on the Diva. They can play literally any tank right now, and I think that's what is going to give London quite the edge in a lot of these matches that they're having. And it's just going to be an easy 3-0. I think that even with like Dove,
Yeah,
the Paris just looked really weak last week, and I think that's going to carry into this week as well.
yeah. Like you went 3-0 against Boston. Now London, which is probably a much better team than Boston right now. I'm assuming, yeah, it's just gonna be a blowout.
The Atlanta Reign, though, coming off of a disappointing matchup against the Shock last week, looks to get their revenge on a team that had probably one of the most disappointing performances of the season, the Houston Outlaws. Who do you have and why? Because I honestly I think this could go either way.
So I have it. I'm probably gonna give it to the Rain, and I'm at 5. I think both these teams are at an interesting point in their run right now. Although I do think Rain is going to take this in any way. I think it's just gonna be the Rain because the Lane they still look like that top team. They just they just couldn't beat the Shock in because the Shock are looking so good right now. But I think like they're able to be like this top team, but they do it in a much less convincing way. Like, for example, we keep on going back to that Boston game, but Shock taking it in a 3-0 fashion, while Rain kind of slipping up in a map 5. They're still able to be that top team, but it's a lot less convincing than someone like the Shock.
Yeah, and honestly though, I do think that the Houston Outlaws are still such a dominant roster. Atlanta Reign too, but again, we're predicting two teams that are not the most consistent to play. This is due to the fact that again, a lot of their team's reliances comes off of like one composition. In the Houston Outlaws, it is the Doomfist. In Atlanta, is kind of more the Sigma. And Sigma is definitely a great play into the Doomfist. However, Houston's been playing a lot of Sigma as well, bring Piggy back in, and we've just kind of seen how on why Piggy was chosen to stay on the team because he is just such a good Sigma, such a good diva, and he's really kind of proven that this team has what it takes to take down the Atlanta Reign. I do think though that is going to be a map 5 and really could go either way. But I am going to give it into the Houston Outlaws.
All right.
Next up,
Well, next up we have the Toronto fight and the Gladiators. Gladiators are looking as strong as ever, and Toronto does have a bit of a confidence boost from the Justice. Oh no! Now a lot of people thought they were gonna win that, but they were able to beat the gotcha game odds uh, and win that one.
I have nothing really to say here. Toronto, I just don't think that they can even take a map off the Gladiator squad, which is why I'm predicting a 3-0 victory.
I do, however, I am giving a little bit of faith in Toronto. I think uh, due to last week's match, I'm just gonna put a little bit of faith in them. Maybe they can take a push map or something. I don't know. They're just kind of a standard team, and I think they're at a point where they can take a map at the Gladiators. But I'm not giving them anything above a map for in a prediction.
Alrighty, but next up is a team that the Shock has, for some reason, had very inconsistent games against. Not losing, but even with this really bad Titans roster, we have seen before that Vancouver's taken close games to the Shock. But again, this is a completely new Shock. They are currently 10-0 and are looking more dominant than ever. While Vancouver is winless and really hasn't taken any maps at all this year.
I don't. Are you living in like 2019 or something? Because the Titans have never taken close games after runaway.
I remember
I
at
think
least one
everything.
time last season where Shock
I
was
think
down 5.
I'm pretty sure they've all been 3-0.
I mean, I'm predicting 3-0. I just wanted to give a little bit of
Yeah.
history lesson that might be wrong.
Also,
So don't
history
kill me on
lesson.
that.
This has been the fastest game,
Yeah.
ever. Just ever. I, you know, Deepay, he's pretty good. He's made some improvements to the team. It's not enough to beat the Shock, though. I mean,
Yeah, no, not at all.
Titans schedule, such a brutal schedule. Like another, you know, maybe in the summer showdown they might take a win. I don't know what the schedule is, but it has to be easier than this one. I don't think a single team has gotten a worse schedule than the Titans has ever.
Well, that being said, we're going up again, and we're now going to the Washington Justice and the LA Gladiators. The Justice had a really bad performance last week. I don't think there's really any denying that. And Gladiators look really good too. So, is there really
Yeah.
much else to say other than the fact that the Gladiators have an easy game here?
I'm just saying that right now the Justice is looking like a gotcha team, and right now they're playing Genshin Impact and they're rolling that 50-50, and they got the bad side.
Nobody
So
understands
Justice,
that. It's
it's a reference. It's a to the caster game, or the Toronto and Justice. You roll your gotcha game and you get a bad luck. That's the Justice. It's a heavily stacked odds, but one time you might get that 5-star. Who knows when that'll be?
Well, a match that really could be a roll of the dice here is the Paris Eternal future Las Vegas Eternal against the Toronto Defiant. Uh, I it's hard, but honestly, I do got to give it to the Paris Eternal. Uh,
What?
they
Uh-huh.
they looked really bad last week. However, Toronto has had such poor performances, and we've seen that if they have a bad game earlier in the week, it tends to kind of ruin their confidence. However, I do think that the Toronto Defiant could take it very close, and really, I think that it could go either way. We have Dove, Wub. Uh, we've even got to see Khan and Don team up again, and it looks like it might happen again. And hopefully, we can see that we can see Khan and Don team back up and take down the Toronto Defiant.
Okay, I'm not gonna. I just don't think that's possible. I think Toronto Fire are like actually a team that looks good now. I think they found their footing with the Muse Winston, uh, and I just don't see how Paris are gonna win this one. Like, yeah, they got a win over Nixel, but I mean, you got 3-0'd by the Boston Uprising, and no one's really calling the Boston Uprising a good team now. they are decent, but then that's the thing. You got beat by a decent team. Toronto Defiant is also decent, so I don't see this going any other way other than 3-0.
I have faith in the Paris Eternal. I still like the team. I still think that they have pieces that can work. And a team that I think has the pieces that it can work too is the Washington Justice against the London Spitfire. Another team that has a lot of pieces that seem to be working a lot better than the Justice in recent times.
Yeah, I think the London Spitfire is like standard rush cop. Well, London Spitfire have an identity. They know what they are. Justice are kind of fumbling a bit because they can't just carry. They can't just use their DPS and carrying them way through the midseason madness. They have the entire team has to step up as a whole. Like there's not really much synergy to this roster, and they just need to find that synergy. Although one thing is for certain is that they'll finally be able to play a true double flex support composition now that Vigilante will be playing this week. I'm not
Is it
sure
gonna
how
just
much
be
he's gonna
Sunday,
help.
or
No, also against the Gladiators.
I mean, my prediction really doesn't change. I do have Justice taking a map. I think that they have
Yeah,
potential too, but London just looks way too strong right now. They're
I
definitely looking to be one of the top seeds, which is really nice. I think that's something that nobody expected from this London Spitfire squad. But it's definitely a welcome change.
I think that Justice are probably gonna take 2 maps. I'm gonna give them 2 maps. I don't know why. Maybe that's my hot take of the day.
You
I
have
don't know.
Copium.
Copium, sure.
But a team that really will need some copium is the New York Excelsior as they go against the Dallas Fuel. Dallas looked really strong last week, coming off of their really poor performance in Week 1. Hopefully, they'll keep this momentum going. It seems kind of apparent that they most likely will, since Nixel is just terrible.
Yeah, I think Rush has done it once again, where he finds his off meta comp, which now is just literally last tournament's meta, just with the Sojourn,
Yeah,
which is I think hilarious now because you know that's a classic Rush thing to do, right? Wouldn't you say, or
yeah.
wouldn't you think?
And it's
So
like the
now they
unfortunate
found.
thing, man. I hate betting against the New York Excelsior though. It's like they have such a phenomenal lineup. They have Yaki, they have Youngbung, they have such good pieces, but it's just the fact that this coaching is just so terrible.
Yeah, the synergy is not there whatsoever at all either. So
And
that's just the fuel. They finally found their bread and butter, but is it enough to make them a top team now? We'll find out once they actually face a good team, not the New York Excelsior.
and now we are hitting a team that two teams that we've also seen to be pretty consistent with their synergy is the Florida Mayhem and the Boston Uprising to close out the entire weekend on Sunday.
All right, and this one I think is going to be an interesting spot. Boston is in a really interesting situation right now, just finally getting rid of their general manager Huck,
Yep.
which most people would agree is a probably a good thing for them because a lot of people didn't really like Huck, and considering the position the Boston Uprising has been in for the past, half a decade basically, they just haven't really been, showing up. And I think with a new GM, they might be able to now have a little bit of motivation. And another thing in that update was that they were looking at roster changes. So maybe that's a little bit of motivation for the players who want to stay in the Boston Uprising to start performing better and show that they can still they don't need any roster changes. So
I
hopefully
mean, Punk doesn't need to worry because he'll probably still be on the team regardless.
Punk's just gonna be there for eternity.
Yeah, I don't get why they still
He's
have
gonna
him,
be like
but you know.
he's gonna be like a Boink from the Outlaws. He's gonna be there.
All
But yeah,
right.
no, I think
Well,
that I am agreeing that, or I'm just gonna say that the Uprising is gonna take this 3-1.
I actually I kind of ran to the prediction. I was about to do the ending.
Yeah.
The outro.
You're-
I think that Florida could still win this. Again, Boston is just they have momentum right now. However, I think that they're just too inconsistent to kind of give a definite yes. They can beat a middle tier team. They can beat lower tier teams, sure, but they're also a lower tier team. Now that they're up against a lower middle tier team, probably the only team that's above them, or the only team that is kind of uh, the team that's just below the Florida Mayhem is Boston Uprising. So I do think that this can be a close game. We have Huck gone, so we could see a new face of this Boston Uprising. But at the same time, I think that Florida just has the synergy that Boston really doesn't have. So that is my prediction. I am going a map 5 victory for the Florida Mayhem to
I'm just
close out the
saying no
year.
Adam, no wins. So that's again my philosophy.
Well, that does do it for the West region and the East region for week 3 of the mid-season madness. A lot of games I think that could go very close this week, and really, pick'ems might become broken. Uh,
Yeah, there's definitely some room for upset potential, but it's hard to figure out which match. So that's why I'm going pretty safe this time. I'm not doing any more. I'm not predicting the Titans this no time. No, not anymore. Especially not against the Shock. But there's
yeah,
not really much room for upset potential.
I mean, I have a couple upsets coming in through
Yeah,
this week. You know,
yeah,
I
you got
have
that.
this
You have
Valiant team.
Paris.
I have the Valiant team taking out Shanghai. You know, I have the Outlaws beating the Rain. I have the Eternals beating the Defiant. And
You got some upsets, but I know I'm pretty safe.
and to a degree, Florida beating out Boston. Uh, Regardless, I think that this week might be really exciting.
Yeah.
And hopefully, uh, these upsets happen. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys next week.